Welcome to the Student Activities Business Office Treasurer's Workshop Training. We hope this training will provide you with a basic understanding of SABO, its organization, and its functions. We hope to introduce you to the responsibilities and benefits of being a SABO account holder. We hope to educate you on the proper way to perform common SABO transactions, and we hope to highlight some of the most important aspects of SABO and to identify resources you can use to get the most out of your relationship with SABO. Let's begin with a brief introduction to the Student Activities Business Office, also known as SABO. SABO administers and manages the financial resources of student organizations and departments of Rutgers University. SABO manages the Rutgers University Student Fund, which is comprised of student fees, generated revenue, dues, and allocated funds within Rutgers University. SABO provides efficient and timely accounting and financial services at no charge and provides information and assistance in opening, closing, general usage, and maintenance of accounts. Finally, SABO also ensures compliance with all university policies and procedures in relation to the use of student and university funds and protects the university against risk associated with the use of these funds. You can find the SABO office located on the lower level of the Student Activities Center on the College Ave campus. During the fall and spring semester, SABO is open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Next, let's discuss a few numbers and terms you should become familiar with. Every account has its own account number. Very similar to a personal checking account number, it is a 3 or 4-digit code uniquely assigned to each account. It is very important for you to know and memorize your account number. In the SABO online system, the account number will often be visible and will be added to forms and requests automatically. However, if you or another account holder are completing forms by hand, such as a deposit slip, you will need to write in the account number yourself. SABO representatives will also ask for the account number when a check is being picked up. Most accounts will also have multiple line codes or sub-accounts used to isolate the source or intended use of funds. For example, a common line code is 137 for generated revenue. When funds are allocated to an account, they are allocated by line code and often cannot be transferred between lines. For example, if your organization was allocated $500 for programs, and after those programs you still have $200 left, that money cannot be transferred to other lines, such as your generated revenue or overhead funds. You may also be asked to identify a transaction code, which identifies what money is being spent on or where it is coming from. For example, if your organization used money to pay for food for a meeting, you would select transaction code food. Memorize and master these numbers. They will help you to navigate the SABO online system, help you to understand your statements, and help you to communicate more clearly with SABO staff. There are a few more important terms to understand about your account. All accounts at SABO have two account holders, or persons who will have access to the account online and the ability to perform transactions at the SABO window. The account treasurer will always be one of these two account holders. All accounts at SABO also have a control account and an administrator advisor. The control account indicates which department oversees your account. For student organizations, most will fall under Student Life's control account. Your administrative advisor will be a representative of that department or unit who must authorize your transactions and withdrawals. These definitions and many more explanations of SABO terms can be found throughout the Treasurer's Key as well as in the glossary in the appendices. As your student organization's treasurer, you have several important responsibilities. First, you should assist in the development of your budget and project plans for your organization. You should also review your approved program budget and understand what these funds can and cannot be used for. If you are unsure, refer to your treasurer's key or consult with your administrative advisor. Next, you must ensure that your account does not go into a deficit balance and that all expenditures are within budgeted amounts. Do this by tracking all expenditures and checking your account statement. You can check your statement at any time via SABO online, and we will show you how to do that later on in this training. Next, you should seek approval from your administrative advisor for all expenses. It is your responsibility for ensuring that all expenditures are properly documented and approved by the administrative advisor or other organization officers. It is very important that you do not make a commitment to an expense prior to gaining approval from your administrative advisor, as this could lead to paying for those expenses out of pocket. Therefore, never make a purchase or financial commitment without the necessary approvals, and be sure to always have the receipt, bill, or record to back up your expenses. It is also important to present the required documentation, such as receipts or invoices, to SABO promptly when requesting a check or reconciling in advance. And lastly, inform group or organization members about all financial transactions you process, and help to educate other members of your group about the SABO policies and functions. There are two main ways to access your SABO account. You can access it through SABO online or in person at the SABO office. It is important to consider the task you are trying to accomplish when deciding whether to visit SABO online or if it requires visiting the SABO office. You can access SABO online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and may initiate transactions as long as the account is authorized to be operating. You should go to SABO online to submit check requests, cash advances, transfer requests, and PERR forms. These transactions must be completed online. We will cover how to perform all these common transactions later on in the training. You can also visit SABO in person at the SABO office, located at the Student Activity Center. By visiting the office, you can access your accounts, pick up approved checks, and make deposits during normal SABO business hours. Again, SABO's hours during the fall and spring semesters are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Account holders are encouraged to work with their administrative advisors and SABO staff to overcome any obstacles preventing timely access to their account online or in person. The SABO website can be accessed by visiting www.sabo.rutgers.edu. The SABO website is filled with information to help you. Under the Services tab, you can read about various services that SABO provides, including selling bus tickets, mail, setting up online sales, setting up mailing lists and web pages, as well as ticket sales. Under the Forms tab, you will find forms which can be downloaded and printed, including the deposit slip, online sales requests, prize, award, and gift card forms, and ticket sales request forms. Under the Resources tab, you will find the Treasurer's Key and Treasurer's Training, along with video modules for step-by-step directions on some of the most common SABO-related tasks. By clicking on the Policies tab, you can read some of the policies for various procedures. And finally, click on the About Us tab for contact information and hours and directions to SABO. By clicking the SABO Online tab, you will be redirected to the secure SABO Online website. You will need to type in your Rutgers NetID and password and log in. This will bring you to your SABO Online dashboard. From here, you will be able to perform various transactions. On the right-hand side of the page, you will see links to initiate check requests and transfer requests. There is also a search request link that will allow you to search and pull up requests you have already submitted. You can also view and print your statements, as well as check on pending requests that you have recently submitted. If you have any trouble using the SABO online system, the contact information for SABO is also located here. Let's talk in more detail about some of the transactions you will be performing on this website. The three basic transactions through SABO are check requests, transfers, and deposits. Check requests are necessary anytime a person or business needs to be paid. The check request process requires 2 steps. First, a check request must be submitted via the SABO online system and must be approved by your administrative advisor. Next, you must bring the supporting documentation, such as receipts, invoices, or contracts, to the SABO office to complete the request. The first step in successfully completing a check request is to understand who you are paying. Payments could be going to a person, to Rutgers or a Rutgers department, to a vendor, or it can be a donation. It is also important to know when the money is needed. For example, a PERR is a reimbursement, meaning funds to repay someone who already spent personal money on approved items. By contrast, a cash advance is obtaining funds before an expenditure is made. And one final example is paying by invoice or bill. This would be money needed after an expense to fulfill an obligation. We will now discuss each type of check request in more depth. One type of check request is a cash advance. A cash advance is a request for a check made payable to a Rutgers student before an actual expenditure is made. Cash advances are available when funds are needed prior to an expenditure being made or when personal funds are not available. The SABO policy is that 3 separate cash advances, up to $400 each, may be issued for your organization, but you should always confirm with your administrative advisor. Cash advances must be submitted online at SABO and they need to be approved by your administrative advisor. Keep in mind that the net ID is required for the individual who will be picking up the cash advance. The cash advance process looks like this. First, submit the check request for a cash advance via SABO online. Once it is approved, you can pick up your check request from SABO. Then you will be able to make your purchases, but be sure to keep all of your receipts. Finally, you must visit SABO in person to reconcile your cash advance. Bring with you the reconciliation form and all of your receipts. Keep in mind that cash advances must be reconciled within 30 days of submitting your check request. One of the most common types of check request is known as a PERR form. PERR stands for Program Expense Reimbursement Request. The PERR form is used to reimburse individuals of your organization after approved expenses have been purchased out of pocket. The basic process for PERR forms looks like this. First, approved purchases are made by a member of your organization and paid for out of pocket. A PERR form is submitted via SABO online as a check request. You then need to print your PERR form and attach all original receipts. Submit the form and receipts to your administrative advisor. If everything looks correct, your administrative advisor will sign the form, and finally the PERR form and receipts can be turned into SABO. This should occur within 30 days of the expense. Here are a few more things to keep in mind when completing PERRs. The net ID of the individual being reimbursed is required. You should always check with your administrative advisor before making any purchases out of pocket. All receipts submitted to SABO should be original. Make copies for your own record. Receipts submitted should include the following: the vendor name and address, an itemized list of purchases, and proof of payment type. If receipts are missing this information, you must add it and you may be required to show additional documentation such as a credit card statement. Keep in mind that receipts with personal purchases on them will not be accepted. And finally, one receipt will be processed as one reimbursement, so encourage members to check out on their own. For more information on submitting PERS, consult your treasurer's key. You can also submit check requests to pay a contracted individual or a contracted vendor. Here are some important things to remember when dealing with contracts. Contracts are to be negotiated and signed according to your administrative advising department's policies. You will work closely with your administrative advisor to have a contract negotiated and signed. Do not wait to start this process, as it can take weeks. It is never appropriate for a student to sign or negotiate a contract on their own or make a verbal commitment to a service provider. Always involve your administrative advisor. Most contracts require a completed W-9 form, which must be completed for tax purposes. Your advisor will know if a W-9 form is needed. You should never pay for a contracted service out of pocket. All services rendered to students and groups are to be paid by university check. Contracts are for your protection and the protection of your group or association. It is better to ask if one is needed while planning than to find out one was needed after an incident or injury occurs. Finally, don't advertise an event or performance until the contract is signed and filed. Next, let's walk through the step-by-step process for submitting your check request on SABO online. To submit your check request, you will need to log in to SABO online. This can be accessed from the SABO website. Log in with your username and password. On the right-hand side of your dashboard, select Check Request from the navigation pane. Type in your account number and click Select. Next, select the line code you would like to use for this transaction, taking into consideration what each line's funds can and cannot be used for. Next, you would select who you are paying. Selecting Person will give you the option to choose to enter a cash advance, per form, or to pay a contracted individual. Selecting Rutgers University will then give you a list of offices or departments to choose from. Selecting a vendor will give you a list of the most common vendors paid. If your vendor is not on this list, you would simply click Enter a Vendor and input their information manually. You also have the option to select that you are making a donation. For this example, we will select Person and then select PERR. This will now take us to the check request form. The look of this form may vary slightly depending on the type of check request you are submitting. We wanted to go over a few important things to remember when filling out any check request. In the Payee Information section, whether you are paying a person or paying a business, be sure to write their full formal name and the complete address. In the Purpose of Request box, put in a brief description of this transaction. Next, you will often be asked to identify a transaction code. For example, if this PERR was a reimbursement for buying cookies, you would select transaction code food. In the description box, a short description is necessary for the purchase. We will just write cookies for this example. And then in the amount box, you will want to input the amount of the purchase. You can add additional lines by clicking Add. Underneath these boxes, it will show your total transaction amount as well as the line code balance so you can ensure you are not going into a deficit. In the check information box, you will need to input the full description of your purchase. This should include who made the purchase, what was purchased, as well as where and when the event is taking place. All this information is required, and failure to include these details could hold up your check request. For this example, our description will be: Ali Peridot purchased cookies for the final meeting of the semester taking place on April 12, 2012 in the BCC room 117. Under check delivery, you have the option to pick up the check at SABO or have it mailed to the payee's address listed above. Finally, in the approver box, you will always be listed as the first approver. For the second approver, you will want to select your administrative advisor. When you are finished entering your request, click Review Request. If your request looks correct, click Submit Request. This will take you to the confirmation page. Write down the voucher number, also known as the check request number, for your records. This number will need to be written on all documentation that you submit to SABO to complete this request. For all check requests, after you submit your request online, write down the voucher number and account number on your supporting documentation. By far, the most common documentation required for transactions at SABO are invoices, receipts, and contracts. Print any forms available on the submitted screen, such as a cash advance reconciliation form or PERR form. Once the check request is electronically approved, present appropriate documentation at the SABO window. A check will not be processed until the required documentation is received at SABO. SABO reserves the right to require additional documentation before any check is printed. Once the request is approved and appropriate documentation is at SABO, checks will be available in 5 business days. Another common SABO transaction is a transfer request. There are 2 types of transfer requests. The first is an inter-account transfer, or when funds are transferred from one SABO account to another SABO account. Transfers of this nature are often associated with the co-sponsorship of programs. Transfers between SABO accounts must be initiated by the from account and will require approval from an administrative advisor. The second type of transfer request is an intra-account transfer, or transferring funds from the same account but different line codes. Most transfers within accounts will occur from line 137, generated revenue, to another line code. Funds in allocated or budgeted line codes are often not permitted to be transferred out without prior authorization from your administrative advisor and your funding source. Let's walk through an example of a transfer request. This example will be an inter-account transfer, but if you are doing an intra-account transfer, the process would be very similar. From your SABO Online dashboard, click Transfer Request on the right-hand navigation. The From account will always be your account. Type in your account number and click Select. You will then need to select the correct line code. For this example, we are going to choose Miscellaneous Generated Revenue. Next, you want to type in the account you will be transferring the funds to. Click Select, and again, choose the correct line code that you would like to transfer those funds to. For this example, we will be assuming that these 2 organizations are co-sponsoring an event. So we will be transferring funds from our generated revenue to their programming line. So I'm going to select 345 for programs. Review your information and click Continue. Next, select the appropriate transaction code. For this example, it will be co-sponsorship. So you can put co-sponsorship in both transaction codes. Next, put the amount to transfer. It's always best to transfer the exact amount. As always, you must enter a full description using as many details as possible. For example, our description for this transfer request is transferring funds to pay for advertising expenses for Carnival event to be held on April 12, 2012 in the BCC MPR. Next, as the second approver, select your administrative advisor. Click Review Request. If everything looks good, click Submit Request. You will then be taken to the confirmation screen. Write down the voucher number for your records. University policy states that no group or organization that maintains a SABO account may keep funds in an account outside of the university. All funds on hand or collected by the group with a SABO account must be deposited at SABO within 1 business day. Expenses must never be paid from collected cash. All collected funds must be deposited and then expenditures paid by university check. So if you host an event that accepts donations or charges for tickets, fundraise, collect dues, or plan to purchase items collectively, receive a donation or outside support for your group, make sure you deposit the funds. Here's how. To deposit the funds, simply fill out a deposit slip. This can be found at the SABO office or on the SABO website online and printed. Be sure to list all cash and checks being deposited. Make sure that all checks are made out to Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and not to a person or group. Only add the name of the group, account number, and line code to be credited to the memo line only. Do not write anywhere else on checks. Present the completed slip and funds at the SABO window. Always keep the deposit receipt once the funds have been accepted by the SABO staff. Be sure to compare the receipt with your account statement. Any returned or bounced checks will be debited from your account and any additional fees charged by the bank will be imposed. The checks will be returned to the account treasurer to pursue collection. Money collected from events held in student centers must be turned over to the student center staff immediately following the event. The student center staff will ensure that all funds are deposited to SABO within 3 business days. If you plan to spend any funds on or accept donations of items listed below, consult with your administrative advisor or the treasurer's key regarding specific policies. This includes policies on food, travel, printing publications or advertisements, imprinted supplies, giveaways, scholarships, phone charges, donations, compensating university employees, and especially prizes, awards, or gifts. The treasurer's key provides in-depth information on these policies for each of these items. Depending on the department your organization is affiliated with, these policies may vary, which is why it is very important to reference your treasurer's key. Your administrative advisor is also a great resource and can speak to the specific policy for your organization. We hope this training has provided you with a basic overview of SABO and your responsibilities as a SABO account holder. More detailed explanations of the processes we have discussed today can be found in your Treasurer's Key. SABO is also available to answer any questions you may have. You can email SABO at sabo@echo.rutgers.edu or call 848-932-6981.